Up next in the broadcast, Korea holds its biggest Armed Forces Day event in a decade as President Park Geun-hye emphasizes the importance of the South Korea-U.S. military alliance. The first U.S. government shutdown in 17 years begins putting services and paychecks on hold as Washington lawmakers wrangle over legislation and politics to get the country running. Once Korea's fifth largest family-run conglomerate, Tong Yang Group faces bankruptcy as more of its affiliates file for court receivership to buy time to pay back its debts. Primetime News begins now.
Good evening and welcome to Primetime News. It's Tuesday, the first day of October here in Korea. Live from Seoul, I'm Yoo Ji-hae.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thank you so much for joining us. Today marks the 65th Armed Forces Day in honor of Korea's military forces. As part of the national ceremony, a parade was held on the outskirts of Seoul.
Right, thousands of active troops took part and the latest in high-tech weaponry was on display. Arirang News' Kim Hyun-bin was at the scene and brings us this report.
Thousands of military personnel gathered at the Seoul Air Base in the southern part of the capital on Tuesday to celebrate the 65th Armed Forces Day. The ceremony was hosted by the Korean Ministry of National Defense, with President Park Geun-hye and Defense Minister Kim Kwang-jin in attendance. U.S. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel and the U.S. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Army General Martin Dempsey, were there as well in honor of the 60th anniversary of the Korea-U.S. alliance. The officials were witness to several traditional performances by the Honor Guard, as well as Taekwondo demonstration by Korea's Special Forces.
The Armed Forces Day ceremony not only encourages current servicemen, but also reveals South Korea's military might to the world.
Some 120 aircrafts and more than 150 pieces of high-tech weaponry were on display, some for the very first time to the public. They included a South Korean-developed cruise missile called the Hyunmoo-3, which has a range of 1,500 kilometers and can hit targets accurately in North Korea when fired from the south. Meanwhile, another military parade also took place in the heart of Seoul, involving roughly 100 military vehicles and about 4,500 troops marching in formation.
This is the first time I've seen a military parade firsthand. They look very professional and reliable. It was also good to see all the high-tech gear up close.
Fitting with the theme for the day's event, which was celebration with the citizens, tens of thousands of people turned up to show their support for the troops that protect and serve the Republic of Korea. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
And adding more significance to the occasion, this year marks the 60th anniversary of the South Korea-U.S. alliance.
During the national ceremony earlier today, President Park Geun-hye emphasized the importance of the alliance and underlined Seoul's determination to deter threats from Pyongyang. Our presidential office correspondent Oh Jin-ju reports.
President Park says only when South Korea is backed by a strong security force that doesn't tolerate provocations will it be able to protect the nation, keep the peace, and persuade North Korea to take the path of change.
우리는 북한이 핵을 내려놓고 북한 주민과 한반도 평화를 위한 올바른 선택을 할 때까지 강력한 대북 억지력을 구축해야만 합니다.
During a ceremony Tuesday commemorating the 65th anniversary of the establishment of the armed forces here in Korea, President Park stressed that the military's true reason for being is not to engage in war, but to prevent war. She said the government would maintain a strong South Korea-U.S. combined defense system and do its best to secure the capability to counter weapons of mass destruction, such as a preemptive missile destruction system called Kill Chain and the Korea Air and Missile Defense System, or KAMD. Plans for these two systems were included in the government's budget proposal for next year. President Park also emphasized the need for reforms within the Korean Army to become what she called an innovative and creative military that quickly adapts to changes and actively deals with threats.
앞으로 우리 군은 첨단 기술 집약형 선진 군대로 발전해 나가야 하고 혁신적인 국방 경영 노력을 통해서 국방 운영의 효율성과 투명성을 높여가야 합니다.
The president put emphasis on normalizing the wrong practices remaining in the military and promised to enhance the working environment for soldiers. Oh Jun-ju, Arirang News.
And while the two allies celebrated the decades-old alliance here in Korea, lawmakers on the other side of the world were grumbling over Washington's possible transfer of wartime operational control to Seoul.
Now, Arirang News' Hwang Sung-hee has more on the prolonged defense negotiation currently taking place here in Seoul.
First, let me state that
some U.S. lawmakers are reportedly growing tired of South Korea's reluctance to take charge of its own defense. In a recent article, the Washington Post quoted Senator Carl Levin, the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, as saying that, quote, "It's important that we see to it that the primary responsibility for defending South Korea during a time of war lies with South Korea." Levin added that South Korea is a sovereign nation, and sovereign nations should be responsible for their own national defense in time of war. The comments were made during a confirmation hearing for the incoming commander of the U.S. forces in South Korea, Army General Curtis Scaparrotti, in July. For 6 decades since the end of the Korean War, Washington has maintained authority over South Korean troops should another war break out with North Korea. The U.S. was set to transfer its wartime operational control to South Korea by December 2015, but Seoul has recently been very vocal about keeping its forces under U.S. command beyond that date. South Korean officials are concerned that a lesser U.S. military role could embolden North Korea, while Washington is making significant cuts to its military spending due to budget constraints. Nearly 30,000 U.S. troops are permanently stationed in South Korea, and Washington has ensured that the transfer will not weaken its commitment. The issue will be discussed by U.S. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel and his South Korean counterpart Kim Kwan-jin during Hagel's 4-day stay in Seoul this week. Hagel, who toured the demilitarized zone dividing North and South Korea on Monday, said that the visit to one of the most heavily guarded borders in the world was a reminder that North Korea is not only a threat to the South, but also a threat to the United States. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
Marking the Armed Forces Day here in the country, on tonight's News in Depth, we delve into the current issues surrounding the military and national defense.
And they range from an apparent arms race in Asia to the ongoing negotiations between Korea and the U.S. over transfer of wartime operational control. Dr. Kim Dong-soo, research fellow at Korea Institute for National Unification, joins us now to help us shed light on the pending issues. Thank you very much for talking to us.
Good to be here.
Well, Dr. Kim, we're seeing a flexing of defense muscles and posturing among regional players here, China, India, Japan, North Korea. Compared to these other countries, where does South Korea's military capability stand?
As you pointed out, Northeast Asian security condition is not completely stable at all. Territorial disputes are prominent in this area than any other areas in the world. And North Korean nuclear armament is another factor that creates a significant instability in this area. Nonetheless, so evaluating all the objective conditions, the probability of war occurrence is extremely low. But we need to be very cautious about any kind of potential war.
Well, Japan and China are embroiled in a territorial dispute, and they've been boosting their military strengths. Now, how will this affect Korea, and how should the South Korean government try to confront the tense standoff?
There is escalating tension between Japan and China over many different issues. The probability of that tension to affect the South Korean security is low. But again, we need to be very cautious about any potential challenge to our security. I think 2 ways of handling that issue is possible. One way is definitely to enhance our own military capability to make any deterrence to work. The second one might be to keep a good relations with our neighbors like Japan and China. So they believe that any kind of conflict against South Korea would not be in their interest.
Well, tomorrow, a high-level defense dialogue between the United States and Korea is set to take place over the issue of wartime operational control. U.S. Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel said that, we shouldn't really expect to see any firm decisions. What's your take? Do you think it's going to drag on for quite a bit more?
Actually, there was a report that there is some negative atmosphere on that issue within the policy circle in the Washington, D.C. area. But I still believe that eventually the two countries will agree upon another delay of wartime operational control transfer because the two countries share common understanding about the threat posed by North Korean nuclear capability.
Well, let's say the U.S. decides not to delay the OPCON transfer, then what sort of measures should South Korean government take against North Korea's military threats?
Operational control transfer does not necessarily mean the complete dissolution of CFC, which is Combined Forces Command. Rather, what it means is the change of its structure. So even with the wartime operational control under South Korea's command, there is still necessity for strong and close coordination between the U.S. and South Korean military forces.
Well, after a lengthy bidding process for the next generation of South Korea's fighter jets, South Korea decided to start from the beginning again. How essential are these fighter jets to the overall military capability landscape?
Stealth aircraft is designed to avoid any detection using radar system. Considering that the current radar system is very effective in detecting any operation of any kind of aircraft, the stealth capability is essential part of aircraft operation that may determine the efficiency of our Air Force. Therefore, there's no currently alternative to the stealth aircraft to enhance the capability of our Air Force.
Well, Dr. Kim, that's all the time we have for now, but thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Before your day ends and another begins, get the latest news live from Seoul.
Residents whose features
restrictions is on the rise.
closing ceremony.
Expert analysis from Asia's heartbeat.
The legislature circumstances.
With a viewpoint only Korea's global network can provide.
The United States, the latest report. Less than
Unrivaled access from a team always on standby.
Meeting came on the news. We're trying to cover up the South.
Over in the U.S., the first government shutdown in 17 years has begun after U.S. President Barack Obama and House Republicans failed to reach a last-minute deal. An array of services have been put on hold and hundreds of thousands of workers have gone on temporary leave. Son Jung-eun has the latest.
The U.S. government was unable to avoid a shutdown after the Democratic-led Senate and the Republican-controlled House were unable to reach a compromise on a federal budget bill to keep the government open. The Congress has been deadlocked with House Republicans demanding that President Barack Obama's health care law, which is to take effect on Tuesday, be repealed or stripped of its funding as a condition for passing a budget bill. Hours before the midnight deadline, the Senate voted against a proposal by House Republicans for a temporary funding bill that would have kept the government open but delayed implementation of the health care program for a year and permanently repealed a tax on medical devices that helps finance it. House Republicans countered by scaling back their demands and seeking different concessions in exchange for allowing the government to remain open. The partial government shutdown on Tuesday will affect hundreds of thousands of people in a wide range of programs from national parks to the Pentagon. More than 700,000 public service workers will be sent home on unpaid leave. National parks and museums will close, and pension and veterans benefit checks will likely be delayed. However, programs that are deemed essential, such as air traffic control and food inspections, are likely to continue.
The U.S. government has not undergone a shutdown since 1995, when services were suspended for a record 21 days after Republicans demanded President Bill Clinton agree to their version of a balanced budget. Son Jang-in, Arirang News.
Back here in the nation, President Park Geun-hye's cabinet was grilled at the National Assembly by lawmakers on this Tuesday over a couple of recent issues of contention: the government's downsized pension plan and its investigation into the nation's top prosecutor. Our Kim Yeon-ji has the details.
At the emergency hearing Tuesday, lawmakers focused on what prompted the Justice Minister to order an unprecedented investigation into the nation's top prosecutor, which led to the resignation of Prosecutor General Choi Dong-wook. The Joseon-ilbo Daily published in early September allegations that Choi had a son out of wedlock. Ruling party lawmakers argued an investigation by the Justice Ministry was necessary, calling it an ethical issue.
Why is the Democratic Party protecting Choi Dong-wook, whose ethics were seriously challenged? Isn't it because he conducted investigations in the way the opposition party wants?
Opposition lawmakers fired back, pointing the finger at the government, claiming that Choi was targeted for political reasons for the way he pursued certain cases that shed a poor light on the current administration.
This case is not about whether Choi had a son out of wedlock. This is a war between the government and the prosecution, the very first in history.
Lawmakers also clashed on the government's new basic pension plan. Before the December presidential election, President Park Geun-hye pledged to give all seniors aged 65 and above $186 every month. But last week, the government announced that only seniors in the lower 70% income bracket would be eligible to receive the maximum. And 10% of those eligible for the subsidy will receive as little as $93, depending on how long they have contributed to the national pension system. Opposition lawmakers call the change a major backtrack on a campaign pledge. But ruling party lawmakers defended the government's decision, saying the new plan is designed to help the seniors who are most in need. Opposition lawmakers argue the government's plan discriminates against long-term national pension subscribers by giving them less money in basic pension payouts compared to others. But ruling party lawmakers stress that linking the two pensions will not result in losses of individual deposits into the national pension program. Kim Yeon-ji, Arirang News.
Now, one of Korea's largest conglomerates, Tong Yang Group, is on the verge of bankruptcy as it is struggling to pay back tens of millions of dollars in maturing debts this year. The country's financial watchdog has warned that bondholders can expect to take a massive hit. Kim Young-gil reports.
The embattled Tong Yang Group has sought court protection of its assets to avert bankruptcy. Two affiliates of Korea's 38th largest conglomerate, Tong Yang Networks and Tong Yang Cement and Energy, filed for court receivership on Tuesday, followed by a similar move by three other affiliates on Monday. The family-run conglomerate, once the country's fifth largest, still needs to pay back about $1 billion worth of debts in the next 3 months. The group has been striving to avoid a default by putting its thermal power and home appliance units on sale, but few buyers have shown interest in acquiring its assets. The group will work with creditors of its other non-financial units to either split them from the group or undergo a debt workout program. Financial Supervisory Service Governor Choi Soo-hyun said Monday it is inevitable that some holders of Tong Yang securities will face losses.
Partial losses by investors holding commercial papers or corporate bonds sold by Tong Yang Group are inevitable since such short-term debts are not protected by the authorities.
The troubled conglomerate's liquidity crisis has prompted thousands of investors to flock to nearby branches of Tong Yang's brokerage unit to withdraw money from their accounts there. Tong Yang Group started off as a cement manufacturer in the 1970s, before growing into a conglomerate with 29 affiliates. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
On the cultural front, the 31st Korea International Music Festival, the nation's oldest classical music event, kicked off this Tuesday evening in southern Seoul. Our cultural correspondent Park Ji-won tells us what to look forward to at the four-day festival.
Korean violinist Ji-hae Hyun-soo-shin is one of Korea's most talented young classical musicians. She's now starting to gain recognition on an international level after having won numerous awards at prestigious international competitions, including a third-place finish at last year's Queen Elizabeth Music Competition in Brussels. She's one of many artists who will be on the stage Thursday night for the festival's K-Classic concert, which introduces the nation's youngest and brightest classical musicians. The concert will be conducted by Choi Soo-yeol, who's a rising artist himself.
This concert not only features talented and young Korean artists, it also provides a chance to listen to a contemporary music piece by late Korean composer Yoo Ji-hae.
The four-day festival will hold concerts every night at 8 p.m. at Seoul Arts Center in southern Seoul. Organized by the Music Association of Korea, concerts from a broad spectrum of classical music will be in the spotlight, ranging from a joint stage with a Korean chorus group and China National Chorus to a concert exclusively comprised of brass horns. The festival runs through Friday evening. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Good news for South Korean footballer Park Ji-sung. The ankle he injured in a recent match is going to be just fine.
But he is going to still miss some time. Stephen Che joins us now from the Sports Center to give us an injury update. Stephen.
Hey guys, PSV Eindhoven midfielder Park Ji-sung will be out of action for 2 to 5 weeks after tweaking his left ankle in a Dutch league match last weekend. In the 68th minute in the loss to AZ Alkmaar, Park trapped the ball when AZ's Victor Helm made a vicious tackle from behind, stepping on his left heel. Manager Philip Koku said that the X-ray and MRIs were negative and that Park just needed some time to heal. PSV will certainly miss his service as he's expected to sit for 2 to 3 fixtures, including a Europa League group stage match. And moving on to Korean baseball, the KBO has named the Nexen Heroes Park Byung-ho the most valuable player for the month of September. It was a no-brainer considering his monster numbers. In 18 games, he batted .353 with 11 homers, 28 RBI, 16 runs, an on-base percentage of .457, and a slugging percentage of .853, all top marks for the league last month. And with the season coming down to the wire, Park may be a key factor in determining Nexen's playoff picture. And now it's time for Tuesday's top KBO matchup. The Nexen Heroes went up against the NC Dinos at Masan. The Heroes trying to go up the standings with NC in the way. Now we go on to the second. Nexen's Kang Jung-ho, he hits a 2-run shot to left, his 22nd of the season. It's 2-0. Now we have to go on to the fourth. NC's Kwon Hee-dong doubles to left field. The man scores from second. It's 2-1, but Nexen is still up. Now it all changes in the fifth. It's the Dinos' Na Sung-bum. He hits this 3-run shot to right. Dinos lead 4-2. NC adds 2 more runs in the seventh, and the Dinos go on to win this one with a final score of 6-2. And we look at the scores from around the league. LG and Lotte still battling out in the bottom of the 10th, 3-3, while Samsung and Hanwha have finished their games. Samsung wins 8-2. That does it for me here at the Sports Center. This has been Stephen Che. Check back at midnight for the latest in the world of sports.
Time now to go over to our Kim Bo-kyung at the Weather Center.
The Bo-kyung, today the weather was perfect for the Armed Forces Day parade, but I hear rain is in the forecast.
Yes, Ji-hae, it's likely going to rain in most parts of the country tomorrow. First, let's take a look at our satellite map. Currently, Jeolla Province and Jeju Island are under the influence of a low pressure front, which is why it is sprinkling in those regions. Now, tomorrow it is expected to rain in the central regions along with Chungcheong, Jeolla, and Gyeongsang provinces from early morning until afternoon. Also, those of you in the central regions should wake up to a foggy morning, so please be careful on the roads. Now, taking a closer look at tomorrow's forecast, rainy Seoul and Gwangju should hit the mid-20s, and there should be light morning showers in Busan before temperatures reach 26 degrees in the afternoon. Now, moving on to other regions, Daejeon and rainy Jeju will make it to 24 and 23 degrees respectively. Meanwhile, late night showers are in the forecast for Dokdo and Mangkumgang, with the daytime highs of 23 and 14 degrees respectively. Well, that's all for now, but join me for another update after midnight.
Thank you, Bo-kyung. And that's our broadcast on this Tuesday night. I'm Yoo Ji-hae in Seoul.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thanks for joining us. Have a great evening. We'll see you soon.